Today, we are going to dive into one of the most incredible stories in all of biology, human reproduction. We're going to trace the entire journey of how a new life begins, and we'll be using Chapter 3 of the NCRT textbook as our guide.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the basic blueprint of how we reproduce. Then, we'll get to know the key players, the male and female systems, and how they create the actual building blocks, the sperm and the ova. After that, we follow the amazing journey to fertilization and see how a single cell grows all the way to birth. So, before we get into all the nitty-gritty details, let's just set the stage a little bit and look at the fundamental way humans reproduce. First things first, a really important term for you to know, viviparous. All this means is that humans give birth to live young. See, unlike birds or reptiles that lay eggs, the entire development of a human baby happens inside the mother's body. And this is a huge deal because it provides this incredibly safe, stable, and nourishing environment for the baby to grow.
You know, human reproduction isn't just one single event. It's more like a perfectly timed biological relay race. The race starts with creating the runners. That's the sperm and egg cells, a process we call gametogenesis. Then comes the handoff, insemination, which leads to that critical moment of fertilization. From there, the newly formed cell has to implant in the uterus, begin the 9-month marathon of gestation, and finally cross the finish line with parturition, which is just the fancy word for childbirth. Every single step has to happen in the right order.
So, who are the architects behind this whole complex blueprint? Well, let's take a closer look at the male and female systems. These are the biological structures that make it all happen.
Let's kick things off with the male reproductive system. If you take a look at the diagram here, you can see the main organs, the pair of testes. This is where sperm are made. From there, the sperm travel through this whole network of accessory ducts. They get nourished by fluids from glands like the seminal vesicle and the prostate, and then they finally exit through the external genitalia. The whole system is located in the pelvis region.
Now, you might have wondered why the testes are located outside the main body cavity. Well, this slide tells you exactly why. It's all about the temperature. To produce healthy sperm, that process is called spermatogenesis, the testes need to be a little cooler than our core body temperature, about 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius cooler to be exact. So the scrotum basically acts like a natural thermostat to make sure this critical process can happen.
And now, let's switch gears to the female system. This diagram shows its main parts. You can see the pair of ovaries, which are responsible for producing the eggs, or ova. The eggs then make their way through the oviducts, you might also know them as the fallopian tubes, and head towards that muscular uterus right in the center. This entire system is brilliantly designed not just to make an egg, but to handle fertilization, support a 9-month pregnancy, and, of course, childbirth. Okay, so we've met the systems, now let's focus on what they actually produce, the building blocks themselves, the gametes. We're going to dive into how sperm and ova are actually made.
The big picture term for this whole process is gametogenesis. In males, we call it spermatogenesis, and in females, it's called oogenesis. And as you're about to see, even though they have the same end goal, the way they get there is, well, it's remarkably different.
Okay, this slide is where things get really fascinating. Look at the contrast here. In males, sperm production starts at puberty and it just keeps going, like a factory that runs 24/7, producing millions of sperm every single day for the rest of their lives. But for females, it's a completely different story. Oogenesis actually starts before they're even born, while they're still an embryo. Then it pauses for over a decade, picks back up at puberty, and then only releases about 1 egg a month until it stops completely around age 50. 2 totally different strategies.
Now, at the heart of both of these processes is a special kind of cell division called meiosis. As you can see, the cells we start with have a full set of 46 chromosomes. But through meiosis, that number gets cut in half. And why is that so important? Well, the final sperm and ovum have to have only 23 chromosomes each, so that when they finally fuse together during fertilization, the new zygote gets back to that perfect number of 46.
Okay, the building blocks are ready. Now we get to explore the monthly cycle that prepares the female body for a potential pregnancy and the supercritical chain of events that allows these 2 specialized cells to finally meet.
So in human females, this reproductive cycle is what we call the menstrual cycle. It's this recurring series of events that happens, on average, every 28 to 29 days or so, from the start of one menstruation to the start of the next.
This cycle is really like a hormonal symphony. If you look at the graphs here, you can see how the key hormones change. Up top, you've got the pituitary hormones, LH and FSH. See how they surge right in the middle of the cycle? That surge, especially of LH, is the trigger for ovulation. That's the release of the egg from the ovary, which you can see in the middle section, happening right around day 14. And then, in response, the ovarian hormones down below, estrogen and progesterone, cause the uterine lining to thicken up, getting it all ready and welcoming for a fertilized egg.
You often hear people say timing is everything, and in reproduction, that is literally true. As this image shows, you can have millions of sperms surrounding an egg, but for fertilization to even have a chance, they have to meet at the exact right place at the exact right time. And that meeting point is a very specific spot in the fallopian tube. If the egg and sperm aren't there at the same time, fertilization just won't happen, and that explains why pregnancy doesn't happen every single time.
Fertilization itself is like something out of an action movie. First, a sperm has to fight its way through the egg's protective outer layer. As you can see in step 2, it has these special enzymes on its head that help it break through. But here's the most amazing part. The split second that one sperm gets inside, the egg's membrane instantly changes. It creates this invisible force field that blocks every other sperm from getting in. This makes sure only one set of 23 chromosomes joins with the eggs, creating a healthy zygote with the correct total of 46.
Once that single-celled zygote is formed, a brand new and totally incredible journey begins, the 9-month period of development inside the uterus that we call pregnancy.
So after fertilization, the new zygote doesn't just hang out. It starts dividing like crazy as it travels down the fallopian tube, becoming what's called a blastocyst. Its journey ends when it gets to the uterus, and it burrows itself into that nutrient-rich uterine wall. This step is called implantation, and it's what officially kicks off a pregnancy.
Once the embryo is implanted, an entirely new organ starts to form, the placenta. You can think of it as the ultimate life support system. It's the bridge between the mother and the embryo, delivering all the oxygen and nutrients and taking away all the waste. But it's also a hormone factory, pumping out hormones like HCG and HPL that are absolutely essential for keeping the pregnancy going.
Over the next 9 months or so, the gestation period, that one single cell completely transforms. It's just wild. By the end of the very first month, the embryo's heart has already formed and is beating. By the end of the first trimester, most of the major organ systems are already there. The first little kicks are usually felt around the 5th month, and by the end of 9 months, the fetus is fully developed and ready to meet the world.
The grand finale of this journey is parturition, or childbirth, and it's just this amazing example of a biological feedback loop. It all starts with signals from the fully developed fetus, which cause some mild uterine contractions, which in turn trigger the release of a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin then causes even stronger contractions, which releases more oxytocin. This powerful cycle just builds and builds on itself until the baby is finally delivered.
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, from the nonstop production of sperm to the once-a-month release of an egg, from the hormonal surges to that split-second block during fertilization, this entire process is governed by an unbelievable biological precision. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? Why is this intricate dance of timing so absolutely critical for the continuation of life itself?